Alrighty, so I'd like to thank you for being my third guest on my podcast. I just interviewed Sean,
Yeah,
for, Beetlejuice. So I'm excited to add you to the list. Um,
yeah,
for the people at home who don't know about you, can you please explain a little about yourself, what you do?
totally. Yeah. Hi everyone. My name is Lee Price. I am in the national tour of Beetlejuice the musical, and I'm in the ensemble and I understudy the roles of Beetlejuice and Otho.
Alrighty. And what was the audition process like for Beetlejuice?
Yeah, every process is different, and I've heard stories of people going in once and then having one callback and getting the job. And then there are people like me who've had much longer journeys. So my journey started in around April of 2022. I was still in college, and my agent emailed me and was like, "Hey, what do you think of the role of Beetlejuice and the show of Beetlejuice?" Just kind of random. And I was like, "Oh, I never thought I could do it, but I'm down to try. I'm down to try anything." And he was like, "Great, you have an appointment for the show." And I was like, "Awesome." So I had a self tape for the role of Beetlejuice, and I had to do the whole Fred of Their Lives sequence. So I did the scene before the song, a cut version of the song, but still the majority of the song, and then the scene after the song. I taped that, I sent it out, and about a week later, I got an email from my agent. They're like, "Hey, the creative team wants to see you in person next week." And it was on May 9th, and I graduated college on May 7th. So I graduated college May 7th, flew to New York May 8th, and then had my first callback on that Monday. And it was just like a whirlwind of just getting there. And I had about a 40-minute work session with Katie Davis, our associate director, and Chris Kukul was in the room, and a bunch of casting was in the room, and there were a few other people in the room. And we just worked on all the Beetlejuice material. I did the opening monologue, I did Whole Big Dead Thing Part 2, we did the whole goodbye sequence, and then the whole Friday Live sequence. And then I left, and then literally the next day, I think, or was yeah, it was the next day, I got an email from my agent. I had left another audition for something else, and I got an email from my agent, and he was like, "Hey, Alex Timbers wants to see you in the room." And this is for the role of Beetlejuice full time when they were still auditioning for the principals. And so I'm like, "Oh wow, this is exciting." And so I went in again 2 days later, for Alex Timbers and the remainder of the creative team, and just did the same packet, was in the room for about 15, 20 minutes because we weren't working on the material as much. It was more of like, let's just do it and see how it fits you. And Timbers was the sweetest, and as he always has been. And then I left the room, and the next day my agent called me and he's like, "Hey, the creative team, they all love you. They really want to work with you. They think you're a little too young to do the role of Beetlejuice full time, but they think you're really good for Otho. Would you be interested in that?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." Like, great. They're looking at you for Otho, understudy Beetlejuice, when that was like a track in the making. Because when a new show goes, when not a new show, but when like a show goes out on tour, sometimes they'll retrack the ensemble or some of the roles for coverage purposes because they can't take as many like standbys and swings as a Broadway company would. And so then I started going in for Otho, and I had a self tape request for it, and I filmed uh, all three Otho scenes and just sent it out. And then about a week later, they asked if I could do a Zoom call back, and I was on vacation with my family, and there was a big time difference. And so I was doing a Zoom call back at like 10 p.m. And they asked me, "Where are you?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm on vacation with my family. This is the time right now." And they all started laughing. And they're like, "Well, thank you so much for being here." And this was with Katie and like the rest of the team. And we just worked on the Otho material, and everything was landing really good. And then I got a request to come back in person. I had another session with Katie, and then I had another session with Alex Timbers later that day. And this is about callback, I think number 6. I could be wrong. And this was still for Otho, understudy Beetlejuice, did all the Otho material, all the Beetlejuice material again. The next day, they were like, "Hey, can you come in and dance for us?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" And this was the day I was leaving to do a summer stock contract. So I was like, okay, this is like, at this point, like we've spanned from uh April 25th, which is when I got the email from my agent, all the way to June 22nd, like 2 months at this point. And so I go in again for it. I dance. We did the whole mover sequence from Beautiful Sound, the tapper sequence that I get to do every night. And they're like, yeah, great job, Lee. You're free to go. And I was like, great, stunning. Thank you so much. And then about a week and a half later, I got a call from my agent. And I was like, is this the offer? I'm so excited. And he's like, hey, how are you? And I said, I'm doing okay. How are you? And he was like, so they really like you, but they're going with someone else for Otho. But the Otho is not covering Beetlejuice. The Otho's covering different tracks because with a show that goes out on tour, they're retracking everything. So you could audition for something, and then the next day they offer to someone else, but they lose the understudy tracking. So they're like, they still are interested in you. Are you interested in the ensemble and understudying Otho and Beetlejuice? And I was like, hell yes, I'm interested. Like, I want to be in this show. And he was like, great, I will let them know. And just know it's not an offer, but you're heavily in the mix. And then about a month and a half goes by, and I hear nothing. And it was July 26th. I was going to the city for a different audition. And I was like, you want to know what? I probably didn't get it. It's fine. We're going to move on. That's just life. Life of an actor. You hear more no's than you hear yeses. And I go to the city. I do the audition. I'm with my friends. I'm getting soft serve ice cream out of like one of the trucks in the city. And my phone rings and it's my agent. And I'm like, oh, wow, is this it? I don't think it is. I don't know. And so I answer the phone and he says, how are you? And I said, I'm doing good. And he says, well, I am looking at an offer right now for you for the Beetlejuice tour. Congratulations, Mazel Tov. And I was like, I started crying. I was like, I'm going to curse real quick. You're bleeping kidding me. And I was like screaming on the side of the street in the city. And I was with all my friends and they were like filming me. It was like the most surreal experience. And it was so special. Uh, and yeah, I got the offer for ensemble understudy Beetlejuice Otho, and he was like, "Where are you right now?" I said, "I'm in the city with a bunch of my friends. We're actually about to go out and like party." And he was like, "Okay, so you go out, have fun, get yourself a drink, and I'll call you tomorrow with more contract details." And I was like, "Great." And so that was my like audition journey for the show, which spanned a total of I think 3 months, because I got my initial appointment technically on April 26th, but my email from my agent was the 25th. And then I got the offer July 26th. So it was just like a crazy 3 month period. And listening to other people talk about their journey with the show and like their audition journey is very different than mine. And there are some that are similar to mine. So it's like really fun. It felt, oh, I'm so sorry, a car's driving by and the windows are open, but it was very validating knowing that the team just liked me so much and wanted to keep me in the room as long as possible. And they wanted to find a place for me in the show, which makes me feel really special. And it's something that I don't take lightly. So I am very grateful to be part of the show. So that's my journey. I babble a lot. So I hope that was good.
That was awesome. Uh, so you said you're in the ensemble, correct? And you understudy Otho and Beetlejuice.
Yeah.
What is it? How often do you play Beetlejuice, and is it different? Is it like harder each night you play since you don't play him often?
Yeah, stamina is a huge thing with the show because Alex Brightman and Justin Collette, original Broadway Beetlejuice and original tour Beetlejuice, are freaks of nature. They are incredible. And I don't know how their bodies do it every night. I truly look up to both of them with immense like respect and praise because doing it is so hard. So we've done the show about 420 something times.
On tour?
Yeah, on tour. And out of that amount, I've only done Beetlejuice 7 times. And the other understudy, Matthew, who is wonderful, he's my little Beetle buddy. He functions like an offstage standby. But he's a swing, so he is not on the show every night. He's kind of just like offstage, ready to go whenever. So he's usually the first line of defense. So he's done Beetlejuice about I think 25 or 30 times, and I've done about 7. And every time I do it, it gets easier in a sense, but I find things that are harder. And the first 30 minutes of the show, Beetlejuice does not leave the stage. And if he does, it's very, very briefly. And so it's like from the opening number all the way to Whole Being Dead Thing Part 3. That's like about 35 minutes where he's just go, go, go. And that's the biggest stamina like beast that I've had to do. Like it's just like tackling that is harder than anything I've ever had to do. And I was doing an Instagram takeover for the Beetlejuice Broadway account,
I was following it. That's how I contacted you.
and someone was like, is Beautiful Sound the hardest number in the show? It must be. And I was like, honey, no. It's the first 30 minutes of the show. And any Beetlejuice can vouch for that. And it was funny because literally right after I posted that, uh, I'm forgetting his last name, but his name I believe is Matt, who's currently in the cruise ship production of Beetlejuice. He's the standby for Adam and Beetlejuice. He stood up and he was like, yes to this 100%. I want to die after the first 30 minutes of the show. Because, and I think, and I was talking to Matthew about it as well. He agreed. It's just the hardest chunk of the show because it's go, go, go. Because you're doing a big opening production number into a monologue, into bouncing all over the place during another song, into doing another monologue, into doing a big choreographed routine, into a whole other scene, into another choreographed routine. It's just, it's hectic, it's chaotic, but it's also the most fun to do, I guess. Because for me, the opening number is the most fun to do every night. That and Beautiful Sound Reprise are my two favorites. And so, like, doing the role, the 7 times I've gone to do it, I've done one of those was a 2-show day. And doing it on a 2-show day was the hardest thing I've ever experienced because the show is a beast within itself. I think the role of Beetlejuice is like the male equivalent to an alphabet track, where it's like go, 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 you're on station time, you are the focal point. And it's just like insane vocals. You're singing like an insane rock, you're singing a really cool rock score where you're bouncing off of like A's and B's. But then you're also doing like this gravelly voice. And I personally don't do the voice. Just because of like my vocal cords are not built that way. Because I take a lot of inspiration from Will Blum, who didn't do the voice either. And so it's pretty crazy. And doing a 2-show day was wild. I passed out the second I got to my hotel. I was like, I'm tired. I'm done. I'm going to sleep. I don't want to do this again. And then the next morning they were like, hey, can you do it again? And I was like, yeah, yes, I can. But yeah, I say this a lot. I think Justin Collette and Alex Brightman have mutant lungs because this role is just so intense, but it's so much fun. And the trick to it is pacing yourself and finding places where you can indulge in the craziness because you don't want to just be crazy and hectic the entire time because then you're going to be out of breath and dying. So yeah, I hope that answered your questions. I like formed a tree and I branched off so much.
Awesome. That actually led into my next question. You said you don't do the voice, so like sounding Beetlejuice, how does that work with you not doing? Is it just your normal voice, or does sound do stuff? Does
Totally. It's interesting because so Alex Brightman created his own version of the voice, which is relatively different from Michael Keaton, where Michael Keaton was more like the gravelly and rasp, and Brightman created like this really cool sound with his false folds. Justin Collette, who was our Beetlejuice on tour, has this really, he's a really good rock singer. And he has this ability to access this like natural rasp and gravel that sounds really similar to Michael Keaton, which is really cool. And Matthew has like trained himself to have a similar ability. When I started rehearsals for it, I spent about a month rehearsing as Beetlejuice during the day, as we would do the ensemble track at night with some of the creatives like Katie Davis, who we adore. And we realized very quickly that my version of the Beetlejuice voice, while it was raspy and it was similar to Michael Keaton's, a lot of my diction was getting lost, and it wasn't sustainable in a healthy way. And I think the most important thing that the creatives want is for there to be a healthy show and for the actors to be healthy, because you don't want your actors struggling to get through the show. And I'm not the first actor to not do a Beetlejuice voice. So I don't think they were scared by that at all. Because in my callbacks, I did a mixture of my voice with a little bit of rasp, and then when we went to rehearsals, I did the full rasp, and they're like, let's not do that. And so now we're in a place where I incorporate a little bit of it here and there. For the classic, it's showtime. Like you want to incorporate like the gravel in that because people are expecting it. So yeah, it's very interesting discussing it because my take on the role is I'm the youngest actor to ever play the role. I'm 23 years old. I got the offer when I was 22. And I'm the youngest I believe by like 11 or 12 years. And multiple actors on the role, and every person who's done it is very different. Like Andrew Kober, Will Blum, Elliot Maddox, Alex Brightman, Justin Collette, Matthew Janice, myself, we're all very different in the role and we all do a different voice. And we're very lucky to have a team that allows us to have that freedom, because it not only allows us not only allows us to be very conscious about our health and our vocal health, because the show is hard, but it also allows us to explore characterization of the role. Because of course you want to keep in those core elements that honor Brightman and Justin and Keaton, but you also want to make it your own. And so Katie Davis, our associate, I talked about when we were like discussing my version of Beetlejuice, we were discussing him as like this like 14-year-old boy trapped in like this body of a demon that is ageless. And it's like really cool exploring that. And I think playing with my voice, it's like a mixture of adding where do I want to add in the gravel, where do I want the rasp. And so like the opening line is, holy crap, a ballad already, and such a bold departure from the original source material. I'm like bouncing all over from like my like above the shelf in like a healthy space to adding in a little bit of like gravel and rasp here and there with a little bit of a vocal fry. And so it's a lot of really just sitting in the technical elements of how can I play with this in a way that's healthy for me and in a way that's sustainable, but also in a way that honors the work that's been done before me.
That's awesome. How long of a notice do you get that you're going on for Beetlejuice?
Yeah. Every company is different. Our company have been has been very good with letting all the actors know in advance with like a good amount of notice, because a lot of shows I've seen stories of people getting like a 30-minute notice to like literally like 5 minutes before showtime notice. With our show, the latest notice I got was about an hour and 15 minutes before the show, which is still enough time to prepare. I kind of knew I was going on because I kind of function as a secondary cover in a sense, because there's no ranking, but because Matthew goes on primarily because he is an offstage cover. Whenever I go on, it's usually because he is unavailable to go on or he's too tired. And so I kind of knew I was going on that one time because he had texted me and he was like, hey, just letting you know, I don't think I can do this show today. Just letting you know, you're probably going to be going on. And I was like, great, thank you. And then my stage manager called me. I was like, hey, you're going on today. Get to the theater as soon as you can for hair and makeup. And I was like, great. Because the Beetlejuice call time is about an hour before the show. So he has to, so let's say the show's at like 8 p.m. He has to be there at 7 p.m. to start makeup, and the makeup process and hair process is done by 7:30. And then you have like kind of half an hour just to like get ready for the show. But I like getting there extra early because I have a whole physical body and vocal warm up that I like to do. And then when it's a vacation, because let's say Justin wants to go on vacation and he's just wants to take his vacation, which we all get paid time off, which is wonderful. I'll get a 2 weeks notice ahead of time, which will be really nice because then I can like get tickets and my parents can come and see the show. And so every time it's been a vacation setting, my parents and my siblings have come see the show, which has been lovely.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Being on tour, what has been your favorite stop on tour?
Yeah, there have been a lot of really cool stops. It's a weird one to like, but when we started tour, we spent so much time in like the dead of winter in like the Northeast. We were in Cleveland, Ohio, then Detroit, Michigan, then Rochester, then Buffalo, then East Lansing, Michigan. We're like in really cold places. And then in like end of February, early March, we were in Greenville, South Carolina, and it was so warm and it was so nice, and I was just so happy to be somewhere where it was just like it felt like a vacation in a way. And it was just such a cute town, and there were a lot of like cute little boutiques and shops, and it felt like a real small town vibe, which I really enjoy because it's nice getting away from like a city aspect. And so I loved Greenville, South Carolina. I talk about it all the time. And I think that was like also the best hotel we ever had because it was like just built. It was like all brand new. It was amazing. And then there was also a pool, and it was like March, and we were all swimming, and it was just, I miss it so much. Anyhow, but another city that I loved being in San Diego, which was lovely. And I went to go visit like the La Jolla area, and it was just beautiful. And I went to the ocean a lot. I went to the beach. And then What else? I'm trying to think of like all the fun cities. We've been to so many at this point, and so many of them are like blurred out in my memory. Minneapolis will always hold a place in my heart because that was my Beetlejuice debut in that city. And it's funny because my debut for Beetlejuice was on September 21st, and the Netherworld Times, the date that's written on there is September 21st. So that's just a little tidbit that was very special to me. And because we use that newspaper in the show every night. And so I was like, oh wow, that's funny. And then what other cities? We're in Charlotte this week, and we were in Charlotte 6 months ago, and they loved us so much that they wanted us back instantly. And
I
so
think that's happening in Chicago too, correct?
yeah, we're coming back to Chicago in May. I believe we broke box office records in Chicago, which was
But yeah,
amazing. And so Chicago, I also loved Chicago, had a great time. Really excited to be back, and we're going to be back in a different theater, which is so exciting.
what
Uh,
theater?
I believe, I don't quote me because I could be wrong. I believe we're in the Nederlander.
That's awesome. I love the Nederlander.
And so that would be fun to like be in a new space because the auditorium was gorgeous and it was a huge venue. I believe it was around 4,000 seats, 3,500. And so it'll be nice being like a new venue in Chicago and getting to explore more of the city. Also, some of the best food was in Chicago, which is great. Uh, but yeah, and so I think those like were some of my favorites. Yeah, I babbled off. I don't remember, but oh, Charlotte, because we're here now. I love Charlotte. I had a great time last time we were here, and I was actually in. So I'm currently in an Airbnb in Charlotte, and last time I was here, I was in the same building, just the unit above me. And so when I knew I was coming back, I was like, I hope this unit's available. And the unit that I'm now in was the unit that Morgan Harrison and Nevada Riley lived in. So it's just like it feels special because they both have left the tour. And so yeah, it's pretty cool being back. It's awesome. And so it's like fun because the audiences I've met a bunch at the stage door. The majority of them have seen us, saw us 6 months ago, and when they heard we were coming back, instantly came back. And so it's kind of special. It's very special seeing how much people love this show and how they just keep coming back. It's amazing.
Stage drawing is always my favorite part of the theater going experience. I have so many like photos from stage doors. It's awesome. I wasn't able to get tickets to Beetlejuice in Chicago because you guys sold out,
Yeah.
but I'm planning on getting tickets in May. So
Yeah.
fingers crossed.
Yeah.
If you could tell your younger self anything, what would it be?
Ooh, I think about this question a lot because I've gotten into like journaling lately and kind of like reflecting on like my life and stuff. And people ask me like if you go back in time and change anything, what would you change anything? And there's of course the many things I would change. But I also ultimately think if I did change things or if I told myself different things, the path and course of my life wouldn't be the same. And and I think as humans, we need to go through periods of struggle and periods of just difficulties to grow. And so I'm very happy with how I came out of like all these situations. And of course, there were many different outcomes that could have happened if I chose different paths. Uh, I think I would have, if I could go back, I wouldn't tell myself to not do anything differently because who knows, maybe I would not have ended up in Beetlejuice. But I think I would have given myself the advice of I'm babbling and I don't think I'm making any sense. But I think I would go back and I would tell myself to just keep pushing and not take everything everyone says so much to heart. Because people say sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That is a lie. Words are painful, and I think words hurt more sometimes. Um, and as someone who's gone through it, through the ringer, even still now, like we're all human, and not everyone's gonna vibe with you, and that is okay. And I was bullied very heavily in middle school, elementary school. I was the kid that ate lunch in the nurse's office. Like I was never in a desirable friend group. I struggled a lot growing up. And college was different because I was surrounded by peers who had similar interests as me. And I gave myself the freedom to kind of just like grow and explore different outlets and different facets and just kind of like enjoy myself more. And that has like really funneled into my life now. But growing up, I really could have used someone else kind of just like being like, push through it, you will be fine. Do not take everything everyone says to heart. It is not the end all be all. And seeing the TikTok trend now of people like posting those videos of like the world didn't end when I was 17, or the world didn't end when I didn't get cast in my middle school musical. Like all of those videos, it's like, yeah, it didn't. And everything seems so important and huge and like life altering when it's happening, but then maybe like even like a couple days or a couple weeks or a couple years down the line, you look back on it and you're like, that was a little blip in my life and look at me now. And so I would go back and I would tell myself, we're circling back to the point. I really just spiraled everywhere. But I think I would go, if I could go back in time and I think I'm answering the question. I don't even remember what the question was, but I think I'm answering it right. If I could go back in time and tell my younger self anything, it would be A, take a deep breath. B, don't take everything everyone says to heart. And C, keep on pushing because there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I think I answered your question.
That's awesome. Yeah, you answered it.
Really spiraled into a spewed conversation.
Alrighty, and then what is your favorite line in the show?
Yeah. Um, my favorite line in the show, it changes every couple of days and a couple of weeks. And my favorite line currently is to do at least is don't text me in the middle of the night
I
saying
love
you
that.
new phone because new phone who dis. That was my favorite line to do when I was auditioning for the show. And now getting to do Beetlejuice a little bit more, that's my favorite line to do every night. But my favorite line that anyone else says is Delia's line, sadness is like a third nipple. It's a part of you, but no one wants to see it. It's like these are like the stupidest lines, but they're so funny. And they just come out of left field and it's just like it they always land and it's so good. Those are like my two favorite. Yeah.
Yeah, I've watched a lot of Beetlejuice like slime tutorials, if you know what I mean. But
Oh,
it
100%.
like yeah, with each Beetlejuice that I watch it of, it's always new phone who dis. I love that line so much. It's awesome. Uh, and then if if a younger kid, not yourself, but a younger kid would ask you for advice on acting, what would it be?
100%. Oh, acting advice. This is advice I've gotten, and for the longest time, I didn't listen to it. And there are times where I still don't listen to it, but I should. I think the best advice I can give anyone is there's only one you. Don't spend so much time trying to be someone else or something else, and find the things that make you unique, because when you incorporate those into your storytelling and into your acting performances, it only helps you stand out. And at the end of the day, people are going to either vibe with you or they're not going to vibe with you. And they're either going to like your take or they're not going to like your take. And it's not the end of the world if they don't like your take. Because at the end of the day, you should be authentically true to what you're doing. Because if you're doing a carbon copy of someone else's performance, at that point they could have just hired the person that you're copying, you know? So I think really try to find elements that you find special, that you find cool, and things that are unique to yourself. And always incorporate yourself into the character, because there's always ways to find yourself in any role that you play. And I'm like big on character analysis and just really discovering how this character relates to me, because you want the story to be authentic. You want your performance to be as truthful as possible. So always try to find a way to relate the character to yourself. And of course, sometimes it's hard because I am not a demon. I am not, I do not have green hair. I have not slept with Katharine Hepburn. I haven't done any of those things. But with Beetlejuice, I really see the idea of longing to be seen and the desperate desire of not being alone and being loved and being just present with people. And I think his constant desire is all he wants is for someone, anyone, to look his way and say, hey, I see you, I respect you, I fear for my safety around you. All he wants is for someone to notice him and to be his friend. And I think any human can relate to that. And I think the way that I take it is, how would I react to this? And it's like, incorporating like the constant need and like this is my goal, this is what I want this. And so being able to relate that to me, like I feel the exact same way. I know exactly how he feels. And so I think with every character that you play or that anyone is acting, it's I'm babbling and I'm losing the point. But I think the main focus is find ways to see the story that's being told, see the character that's being told, see what her, or their objective is, and try to figure out how can I relate my point of view to their point of view? How does their story relate to me? What can I relate to this? Because that'll transform your portrayal. Because there's nothing worse than an unhonest portrayal with anything, whether it's slapstick comedy or like an intense drama. Honesty is your main goal for acting. You want your portrayal to be honest and you want to be genuine. And that's kind of the biggest takeaway I've taken from acting. And that's my biggest piece of advice. I think it would be just find ways to connect yourself to the character and make it as honest as possible.
That's awesome. Well, that's a question portion. But I have a guess the layer game Beetlejuice type.
Let's
And
do it.
so we have 7 minutes left on the Zoom before it kicks us out because of not getting the full version or whatever. I have 4 songs, so you can pick A, B, C, or D.
Ooh, let's pick C.
C,
No, let's pick B for Beetlejuice.
B,
Why not?
Beetlejuice. Alrighty, so this is one of the popular songs, I would say, and it is from I'm pretty sure Act One.
Okay.
So go ahead and jump, but that won't stop me. Here you got a solid Plan B option.
Oh, say my name.
Yeah, what's the next lyric?
Oh, go ahead, jump with that one. Stop her. Here you got a solid plan B option. I can give your daddy so much pain. All you gotta do is say my name.
That's honestly one of it's one of my favorite songs because it's the set and choreography is so different from Broadway via the tour. It's awesome seeing like the comparisons, especially
Yeah,
with the not just that song, but like the set design too.
yeah. It's really cool because the set design for tour, I remember they were explaining it uh when we were like in rehearsals, like the first day of rehearsal, we all sat around and David Corns, our amazing set designer, gave us like a whole presentation of what the tour set was going to be like. And he kind of talked about it, how it was going to be like kind of like a storybook and how like everything transitions to something else. So in that sequence, when you go from like the Dietz's bedroom, uh, from like when Lydia screams her dad, "I wish I was dead," and runs off, the house is already preset behind that curtain. So you kind of see it. It's really cool standing on the house set piece because I'm watching it all happen. Because Charles says she just needs more time. Lightning. The curtain swings closed on one side and then opens up on the other. And it's such a cool transition that I love watching every night. And it was also really cool watching Justin and Bella in rehearsal doing this scene because they kind of they're doing their own thing because every group that does it has a different chemistry, and watching the creatives for the tour really just be so open to reinventing the number and restaging it and playing around with dynamics and stuff, I thought was really cool. So yeah, it's so much fun. It's one of my favorite moments to do in the show specifically, and even more specifically, doing burning the suicide note is one of my favorite bits to do as Beetlejuice. So yeah,
That's awesome. Well, that wraps up the interview. So I'm going to end the recording and then I'm going to talk to you for a second on the Zoom. Uh,
totally.
but I would like to thank you for joining me and I'll talk to you later.
Thank you.
Yeah.